I didn't know what the book was going to be about. So I was really in the dark, and I wrote from the dark, I would say about 2/3 of the way into the process. There was so much that didn't end up in the book. The last third of the process was more like editing and shaping. And then I started to see more of what I was doing. But I think I was really finding my own voice and finding my own story, and therefore finding my own participation in the human web. I always felt like an outsider. I still do in some ways. I'm very unconventional, but um, I felt like in some ways I wasn't really allowed to speak to my own experience. I was always a healer. As a producer, I was a shaper of other people's visions. I was always a shapeshifter, a chameleon, and I was good at that. And I got plenty of juice out of that. In some ways, I was an actress without being an actress. And that was the thing I was waking up to as I wrote the book is, oh, yes, the reason my life hasn't been feeling as juicy and satisfying as I want life to be is because I've been in some ways performing life according to the scripts that I've inherited. And so coming online as my true self was very scary. And that's really what I was starting to talk to you about just now, which is that I'm now on the other side of this process. I've released this very personal piece of work. No one's killed me. No one's got mad at me. No one's chopped off my head or put tape over my mouth, and I do think that there is some shyness and there's fear, and that's normal on a very personal level, but there's also legacy around the dangers of speaking up as a woman. And so this is where I feel like our work intersects is in some ways I feel like I'm doing this for my mother, for my grandmother, for my ancestors, particularly in the female line, who didn't get to speak up and also just didn't have all of these opportunities. And my abilities to speak up and my opportunities and the richness of my life, the sort of multidimensional richness of my life as a woman today is very much because of them. And so as I started to see that through line, there's so much joy in it.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cycle Starters podcast. I'm your host, Heather Rebecca Wilson, and today's episode is especially meaningful because this is a return conversation with someone whose work stays with you long after you hear it. So I'm joined today by the fabulous Jane Garnett. Jane is an Oxford-educated psychotherapist, keynote speaker, author, and former Hollywood producer who now helps leaders and organizations reclaim authorship of their lives and work through her framework, We Are the Movie. In this return conversation, we're focusing on Jane's new book called This Time with Feeling. It's an exploration of what it costs to disconnect from our inner world and what it can look like to come home to ourselves with honesty, presence, and agency. We're also going to follow the ancestral healing threads that run through this work, the stories we inherit, the patterns we repeat, and the cycles we are here to end or begin. We'll talk about what becomes possible when we stop living from a script and start listening to what our nervous systems, our bodies, and our lineages have been carrying. So before we dive into our conversation, I do have a favor to ask. If you are enjoying the content that we are creating here on the Cycle Starters podcast, please like, subscribe, comment, and share. If you have the ability to hype this video, please do that. It really supports the algorithm in getting our episodes in front of more viewers. So I really appreciate the support. So thank you in advance for that. Also, if you would like to join our community, I have an account on Substack. It's called The Cycle Architect. Also, my highest tier membership, the Cosmic Awakening Circle, is also on Substack. So I will put all of that information in the show notes. And without further ado, let's welcome Jane back to the show. I'm so excited to talk about this book, and a big congratulations to you.
Really just digesting what it's like to release my first book. It's been really interesting and unexpected. I realized that it was so much an act of personal healing. We'll see what else it ends up being, but I'm really surprised by the result. I was so focused on just getting it done. I didn't know what the personal yield would be.
I'm so curious about what inspired you to actually put your memories, your thoughts, your
Yeah.
story on paper to share with other people because it's a
Mhm.
very raw and vulnerable thing. And what I love about your writing is that you have this amazing sense of humor about yourself and you have the ability to really paint a picture. And I'm smelling the smells and I'm tasting the different flavors and I'm feeling the different textures. So, yeah,
Great
how did this
question.
all come about?
Yeah, it was a complete mystery, really, to me. It wasn't inspiration. It was more like a kick in the ass from spirit, I suppose. I just felt like I have to do this piece
Yeah.
of work. I don't know what it is. I know it involves writing. I feel at the end of it, there's going to be a book. I didn't know what the book was going to be about. So I was really in the dark and I wrote from the dark, I would say about 2/3 of the way into the process. There was so much that didn't end up in the book. The last third of the process was more like editing and shaping. And then I started to see more of what I was doing. But I think I was really finding my own voice and finding my own story and therefore finding my own participation in the human web. I always felt like an outsider. I still do in some ways. I'm very unconventional, but um, I felt like in some ways I wasn't really allowed to speak to my own experience. I was always a healer. As a producer, I was a shaper of other people's visions. I was always a shapeshifter, a chameleon, and I was good at that. And I got plenty of juice out of that. In some ways, I was an actress without being an actress. And that was the thing I was waking up to as I wrote the book is, oh, yes, the reason my life hasn't been feeling as juicy and satisfying as I want life to be is because I've been in some ways performing life according to the scripts that I've inherited. And so coming online as my true self was very scary. And that's really what I was starting to talk to you about just now, which is that I'm now on the other side of this process. I've released this very personal piece of work. No one's killed me. No one's got mad at me. No one's chopped off my head or put tape over my mouth, and I do think that there is some look, there's shyness and there's fear, and that's normal on a very personal level, but there's also legacy around the dangers of speaking up as a woman. And this is where I feel like, our
Yes.
work intersects is in some ways I feel like I'm doing this for my mother, for my grandmother, for my ancestors, particularly in the female line, who didn't get to speak up and also just didn't have all of these opportunities. And my ability to speak up and my opportunities and the richness of my life, the sort of multidimensional richness of my life as a woman today is very much because of them. And as I started to see that through line, there's so much joy in it.
Congratulations. I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. It takes serious guts to put yourself out there to tell your story in a really raw and vulnerable way. And, speaking of legacy, I just feel like what a tremendous gift you've given to your daughters by putting your story on paper for them to read and understand and wrap their minds around and wrap their hearts around where you come from and what you've gone through. How old are they again? And have they read
Yeah.
this book yet?
They're 16 and 19. The eldest has read the whole thing. Actually, she read it a while ago and has always been tremendously supportive of it. The younger one's not a big reader, but
Beautiful.
she came to a reading of mine
Okay.
recently. She's read parts of it, and they're both very supportive of it. I do a lot of different things and a lot of crazy things, and of all the crazy and different things I've done, this is one of the ones that makes the most sense to them. And yeah, they're terrific supporters, and I do everything I do that is difficult essentially for them, not because I'm a selfless person. I'm not at all. It's just that they're my orientation. When I think about those choice points in life of like, do I want to go through this hard thing and become a better person because of it? The answer is yes, because of them, because I'll be gone before they will be, simply put, hopefully.
Well, your first interview that we did together is so juicy and wonderful, and we get into your practice. I mean, you are multidimensional. Yes, you are a psychotherapist, but you do so many different things. You're an author now, you're a mother, you were a producer at one point. So, for the folks
Mm.
who did not watch that first interview, definitely go watch it. I will link that video to this video. But can you give us a little refresher about your blood ancestry, like
Mm-hmm.
where your
Yeah, sure.
ancestors
So
are
I have
from?
an American side and an English side. So, or English and Scottish side. So the English Scottish side, the Great British side, was from Scotland. And that's the branch that sort of had this very romantic history, but also difficult history. We had a castle and all of these beautiful properties in the Highlands of Scotland. And unfortunately, my grandfather was assassinated and my grandmother was overwhelmed. And we, long story short, kind of lost all of our property and our kind of assets on that side. And then on the other side of the family, the American side, my grandfather was a famous Hollywood film director in Golden Age Hollywood. And I never met him, but I grew up with stories of him. And so I always had this kind of pull towards Hollywood, towards movies, and that kind of whole glamorous world. My father was taken away from the States shortly after he was born and denaturalized, which means he had his American identity taken away from him. So basically, I think there was some terrible cheating story or something where my grandmother violently broke up with my grandfather and said, I'm leaving, I'm taking the boy, he's not even yours, and we're going to England. And then she got his identity taken away from him and turned him into a British boy. It was only many years later that my father did a paternity test and found out he was indeed his father's son. But it was a very kind of truncated history, really, on both sides, which is what kind of I think rendered me a healer. I grew up very aware of the divisions, the splits, the drama in the family. There was a lot of drama, so many stories about crazy things happening, and they were glamorous stories, but they were also sort of shadowy stories. Um, they weren't stories packed with kindness and love, and that was something I always sort of craved. And yeah, so my story has been a story of integration. I mean, I still work in film now. I'm now actually directing. I'm directing a documentary about a porn star who comes home to her heart, and it's a healing journey I
Fabulous.
take her on, where she actually ends up leaving the porn industry, falling in love with a young poet, and starting life all over again. So all of my work is about kind of coming home to the heart, and also, yeah, being multidimensional as a woman to honor the opportunities that we got left with by our very hardworking female ancestors.
Well, so I loved reading your book, as I said, and you are not shy about sharing how
Hmm.
you've engaged with plant medicine for ancestral healing. So I was wondering if you could speak to that for those folks who haven't put that together, that you can engage with intention, with respect, with safety, with integrity, right? You can do this for ancestral healing. What would you say to somebody
If they
who's
want to do
totally
it,
new
or if
to
they're
this
one,
world?
they want to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think, look,
Yeah.
intention is so important. I wouldn't have done it just out of curiosity. There was a long
Yeah.
backstory to why I ended up taking plant medicine. And the first time I took it
Mhm.
was many years ago now, 15 years ago, more than that, perhaps. And I started with ayahuasca. I did it because I felt like I couldn't get the answers I was looking for in the sort of normal ways. I was already a therapist at that point. I'd already opened
Right.
up a lot of psychological boxes. I was unhappy in my marriage. I was unhappy in my life. My life looked very good from the outside, but I wasn't really feeling it. So I knew there was some disconnect. And I didn't know how to get my hands on that disconnect. Traditional therapy hadn't gotten me there. None of the questions I'd been asking had gotten me there. So I had a sense that I needed something else. I've also always had a strong connection to nature. So I knew that perhaps that was a way to kind of get back to it, which I think it really was ultimately. So I don't think you necessarily need plant medicine. Maybe you just need to get into nature. But for me, I needed to put it in my body and experience it. And also initially I did it as a sort of marriage saver. So first I went with my husband. And
Right.
I was really grateful that he was willing to do it with me. It's not really his cup of tea, but he was like, okay, I'll try it for the marriage. And it took us in very different directions. Like for me, the first experience I had of it was a homecoming experience. It connected so many dots for me. And for him, it was just a hellish night. Everyone's different. I think if you're feeling very like deeply curious about it, then you're already in a conversation with it. But if you feel like it's a no for
Right.
you, I would absolutely respect that too.
Well, so you sat
Mm.
with Mama Aya, right, with ayahuasca together, but they made you sit separately, right? Because there's this enmeshment thing that can happen when partners sit together. So tell me more about that. You had a healing experience. You definitely purged a lot. He had a hellish night, apparently. How long after that did you finally decide to walk away from
I
the
actually went
marriage?
back to ayahuasca pretty soon after that. I'd heard that there was an all women's ceremony. So the first one I did was mixed. And then I heard there was this all women's one. And I knew there were some women involved in that ceremony who were pretty terrific. They weren't close friends, but I had admiration for them. And I just had a really strong call around it. And that ceremony was absolutely nuts. It was the craziest night of my life. And that's not in the book. I mean, that would be its own book. I don't get me started on that night. But it was a very, very intense experience. And it was off the back of already having these dots connected. The first time gave me some information about the marriage, that I was spending a lot of energy trying to fix something that maybe I couldn't fix. So in the first ceremony, I saw
Mm-hmm.
our marriage as a vision, and the vision was of a stray dog hiding underneath a bed. And I had this thought of,
Mm-hmm.
I may never be able to tame this beast, this creature. And again, it wasn't him specifically, it was us, it's the combination and the lack of tools that we had. And then in the second ceremony, I had in the middle of all of this wild experience and information that was coming through and being surrounded by all of these powerful women who were going through things, I had this message coming through like a mantra. And it was, you have to feel safe in your own kitchen. And so I want to get specific about this because a listener might think she was in an abusive relationship. And I wouldn't say that is exactly true. Certainly, there was no violence, ostensibly. But on the emotional level and the felt sense level, I didn't feel fully safe. I couldn't really work out why. That was a whole other area of investigation. But essentially, I had married into a relationship that wasn't a partnership of equals. I married an older man who was a
Mm-hmm.
lot more powerful than me. I moved into his house. The fight that we kept having was about renovating the kitchen, funnily enough. And what a silly fight, right? But it was so fundamental. And I've always been obsessed with kitchens. It's also, I always think about my grandmother's attempts of kitchens, my female side of my family in terms of kitchens, because everyone cooks so much. I've broken away from that a bit, but the kitchen is a metaphor for the body and the heart of the house and the heart of us to me. And so I saw that I'd not established myself in the felt sense of safety. Where was that felt sense of safety? It wasn't where I'd thought it was, which was in his hands. I was trying to get him to give it to me. Make me feel safe. He's like, what do you want? I've given you a house. I've given you children. I've given you time. I've given you money. I've given you love. And here I am obsessing about renovating the kitchen. Why did I want to renovate the kitchen? Not because I wanted a fancier kitchen that people could walk into and go, my God, but because I wanted it to feel like mine. And I wanted my life to feel like mine. That wasn't his fault. It's just I couldn't get my hands on it within that structure. So that message, you have to feel safe in your own kitchen, was the message that informed me leaving my marriage. And I was like, what is the kitchen? What is it? And I remember talking to my therapist at the time. I said, I can't see it. I can't see my future kitchen. She said, don't worry about seeing the whole thing. Can you imagine a candle on a table and some flowers that you've picked from outside? I was like, yeah, I can imagine that. cut to me in the best kitchen of all time. It is no longer my kitchen, but the kitchen that I moved into after my divorce, the kitchen that my ex helped me score, was the most next level kitchen of all time. I had 2 dishwashers, like a Viking stove. Of course, I hung
Wow.
up a disco ball, and me and my girls did so much dancing in that kitchen.
Of course.
And it was so interesting that this metaphor played out around this, which was really about finding a way to come home to yourself. And sometimes you have to give up the known world to do that.
Yes. What an amazing example that you are setting for not only your daughters, but just I think people anywhere, but especially women, other female bodied beings who are afraid to make a change, who are afraid to walk away from something that is safe or looks good on paper, right? So, God bless you for that. And this kitchen metaphor is really interesting to me because I'm looking at your astrology chart right now. So, for those of you who are new to my work in this show, I am a galactic astrologer and ancestral healing guide. So, I'm seeing that you're a Cancer sun, correct? Right. So this is the mother. This is nurturing energy. This is someone who loves family, who is so devoted. Also, somebody who has their own cycles, right? Just like a crab who has to scurry and hide between some rocks when they're molting, when they're shedding their old skin. They're tender and they're soft. And then they kind of scurry out when they're ready, right? Once that shell has hardened a bit. So you have that as your sun. That's where you shine. And this is so interesting. It's in the 12th house. So that's the house of the unseen. This is the house of spirituality. This is soul contracts. So for sure, like Cancer, all of the water signs are extremely psychic and intuitive. But whenever somebody has a planet in the 12th house, I know that they're very close to the veil. You shine here, picking up on vibes, picking up on energy, picking up on what is not 3D. Okay. And you're doing this as a profession as well. You're a Cancer rising also. So that's different from your sun sign because my sense is that when we are on the other side, when we are not our personality, but when our soul is deciding, okay, I want to learn XYZ lessons in this life for my soul's growth and evolution, you pick what time you're coming in because that determines the rising sign. And so you decided to come in also as a Cancer. So you're a double Cancer, but the rising sign is your perception of reality. It's the lens that you see everything through, and also the energy that people first pick up on when they meet you. So when people first meet you, they feel that love, they feel your heart, they feel this beautiful, nurturing energy. Of course, you're thinking about your daughters, right? Because that is your perception of reality. What step am I going to take? How is it going to impact my loved ones? How is it going to impact my community, my family, the people I love? And then your moon is in Pisces, which is also a water sign. And arguably, I would say Pisces is the most close to the veil. It's like the energy of artistry and spirituality and this yummy dreaminess. And it's mutable water. But when I tune into this energy, it's like water without a container. It's
My
water that
mother's a
seeps
Pisces.
into everything it touches. So you know this, right? So the growth journey for
Mm,
Pisces is learning how to create a
yeah.
container for all of this water. And so the high expression of Pisces is just like this agape love, like love for all things, for the animals, for nature, for every person. And then the low expression of Pisces
Mm,
is victimhood and woe is me and everyone's against
mm,
me and I can't be a leader, right? And blaming
mm,
everybody else. That's unhealed Pisces. But what I love about what the moon tells us is that it's not only your emotional life, it's also your ancestral wounds, but also the gifts that your ancestors have given you. There's that piece, but also it tells us what you are responsible for giving to yourself in order to feel balanced and at home in your own energy. So you're extremely psychic, you're extremely intuitive, right? Your big three are all water signs. And the whole kitchen thing was interesting to me because the kitchen is the heart of the home. So it makes perfect sense. You're a double Cancer, home, family, safety, love, nurturing. Those are huge themes in your life, right? Connection. And the Pisces thing is interesting because it's all about
Mm,
boundaries, right? It's like, how do I contain this love? How do I not give to people or situations that are not worthy of this huge heart? So I've been saying a lot. How is this landing? Does any of this resonate? I know you said your mom is a
yes.
Pisces, so you're
Yes,
familiar with this.
it all completely resonates. I don't really have any questions about it. It makes a lot of sense.
Okay, good. Okay, good. Yeah. I mean, it makes so much sense knowing what I know about you. I know you a little
Yeah.
bit. Yes, you're extremely creative and you are this very, very warm, loving person. So I love it when we embody our chart, right? It's like, oh, yeah, I'm doing my chart, I'm doing my moon. I have a question for you, though. Tell me about this Pisces moon life because when you feel everything, this can be really overwhelming. How do you navigate this? How do you take care of yourself
Mm,
with this
yeah.
extreme sensitivity
Well,
that
it's
you do
tough. I mean,
have?
the consistent complaint I've had from my intimate relationships, mainly romantic relationships, is you're too sensitive. And I also got that message from my mother, so it sort of feels
Of course.
somewhat karmic almost. Like my question to myself is, am I too sensitive or have I just not managed to handle it right? Or right, that sounds a bit punitive. Is there a better way to handle my own sensitivity? So that's what I'm asking myself because thus far along the journey, I have realized I don't want to shut down my sensitivity. I've done that before, but my sensitivity is my superpower. It allows me to tap in to clients very quickly. It allows me to appreciate so much in life and allows me to give people so much too. So I always remind my partners of that very quickly. I'm like, well, if you didn't have my sensitivity, you wouldn't have all these other aspects of me. So you benefit from my sensitivity. However, it's hard, yeah, because, and I think also relates to the crab, right? There's this when I feel hurt, I withdraw and react very quickly. And so my ongoing challenge is to feel without acting out, to feel without being
Mm.
overtly reactive. That's not shutting down feeling, it's really being with it. And that's the path of heart. So, and it's to me is such an ongoing thing. I am not preaching from the mountaintop about this. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. But where I find value in this is in really opening my heart. And I see it as a physical thing, not just like an idea of opening my heart, but I see myself in the bathtub just activating my heart to accommodate the intensity, the depth of whatever it is, the hurt, the pain, whatever that difficult feeling is, to activate my heart alongside that. Like it's this muscle that can metabolize, which it is, but the amount of love is so much more than I always thought. The self-love journey is so much deeper than those words suggest. And I wish there were better words, you know. So yeah, it's a difficult path and it's an amazing path.
You feel everything. I'm wondering because I hear from colleagues and friends and other people that I've interviewed who have a strong Cancer presence in their chart or just a strong water presence. When they're around a lot of people, they're feeling everybody's stuff. And so it's important for them to be alone to tune into how they're feeling, right? Because when they're amongst a lot of people, they're kind of just feeling everything that's going on. Do you have that experience at all? And do you need time to recharge and kind of
I
just come
definitely
back
need
to
time alone.
yourself?
I love having time alone. I'm introvert and extrovert. I love going in, I love going out at the right times. There are other levels to this. It's like learning how to work on the visionary level more. So I'm learning how to sort of pre-organize my experience on the psychic plane and protect myself energetically on the psychic plane.
Hmm.
So, for example, I think I invited you, but you couldn't come. But recently I had a reading at bookstore. I book this time with feeling,
Yes,
which
your
is
book
about
signing party.
feeling,
Yes.
right? To feeling. So I've got more to say about that. But
Hmm.
one of the things I thought in anticipation is, oh, there are a lot of people I know and love who are going to show up to this thing. And it's going to be stimulating for me because I'm going to feel what they're feeling and I'm going to want to connect to them. but I also want to focus on the piece of work and the delivery. So I don't want to get too distracted. And I was taught a wonderful meditation exercise that I did along with several other sort of visualization preparations. And it was so helpful. And basically it's like, if you're hosting an event, you go into a meditation and you imagine everyone you can who you've invited. And you could also just imagine people you don't know coming in, and you address each one ahead of time. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so happy to have you here. I understand you've had a day and you might be feeling this and you might be feeling that. But I'd really love you to use this time as an opportunity to relax and receive something that you might need. And so in having that conversation ahead of time, very helpful for me. I feel like I've already done what I need to do. And by the time I saw all of those people, I could see I just wasn't getting pulled into the places I normally would. Because I have a reflex to tend to people. I'm a nurturer. That's what I do for my living, but it's not always the time for that. Also, I had already pre-nurtured them in my own mind's eye. Like, you're good. I've already given to you. That's what I felt like. They'd arrived. I've already given to you. And I think that made me a calmer presence, got me out of that codependent relational dance that happens on that subtle etheric plane. And I felt then free to be in my creativity and be the creator and be the entertainer, which is a role that I love. It's just that I get bogged down by the other aspects of it. And I felt like I could hold all of those people too. So I wasn't getting rid of my nurturer to be the entertainer. I just offset it in advance. So it's like I'm learning to be more sophisticated with these parts, but they've definitely gotten me bogged down in the past.
What a great exercise to do, if you have not only a strong Cancer presence, but I just think like that watery presence. But yes, if your default is to nurture and to give, right? To give ahead of time.
The pre-give
I love it.
exercise.
So you're square.
It is good for the caretaker.
Love
the
that.
other thing I want to speak about is while we're on feeling and this may come from the sort of the defensive position of a Cancer who's always been told you feel everything and you're too sensitive. And this is what my book is about, coming home to feeling. Feeling is amazing. It's not just painful, like it's pleasure.
Yes.
It's music, it's movement, it's sexuality, it's sensuality, it's taste, it's smell. I mean, feeling is so many things. Feeling is the embodied experience of being alive on this planet. It's like, it's the embodied
human.
Beingness, particularly in this world that is becoming, increasingly sort of mechanized and disembodied. It feels so precious to me.
Yes. Thank you for that. I don't know if it's because I don't have a lot of water in my chart. My big three are fire, air, and earth. But for me, it's like I had to allow myself to feel some sadness and grief. I had to open myself up to that to experience the amazing pleasures of life. I had to sort of expand my bandwidth, right? It's like you're not going to have the high highs of pleasure if you don't allow yourself to feel the ones that aren't so comfortable. But they're exquisite, even the pain, like the sadness and the grief, there's something exquisite about them.
I feel you.
Do you feel me?
Yes, I do, of course. Of course. I mean, I've been trying to get out of that conundrum for a long time. I'm like, how do you split the keyboard and just have the highs? It doesn't work. It is not
right
the way that it goes. So I'd say that the grief, all of the low lows, they're all portals. This is why sometimes we need guides, because it's really hard to believe this at times. And I feel like I, over time, slowly developed faith around these principles, but it's slow work for someone who's at it all the time. The only thing that needs to happen is the willingness to be with the experience so that it can move. If you fight your experience,
yes,
if you fight your depression, if you fight your grief, if you fight your sadness, your insecurity, your loneliness, your fury, your rage, you are going to get it stuck. It's not going to be able to move. So there's something about attention and loving attention that is like the greatest facilitator of all time. And it just works. So it's like children. If you think about difficult feelings as being children, if you give them loving attention, they're gonna shift. They're just gonna shift. If you ignore them, that stuff is going to carry on a lot longer. So it's hard. It's hard work, but the
Yes.
turning towards is really the only way to facilitate movement, and feelings will always move. And there will always be a movement from heavier to lighter, from darker to lighter, with the application of loving attention. It's just a tried and tested formula.
Yeah, this is so much wisdom that you are sharing. And I feel like sometimes we don't experience emotions because we're not in a safe environment to actually feel them, right? I think there's divine timing with all of these things as well. Well, I love talking to you. I feel like we're on the same page about many, many things. I'm so happy and
Thank you.
excited for you that you got this book done. Is there anything else going on, or is there another event that people should know about where they can meet you, get a copy of the book signed? Like, what else is going on that
Well,
you'd
there's
like
a
to
lot
share with
brewing,
my
and
community?
there'll be quite a few different iterations of this expression of this time with feeling, because it's not just a book. It's a message that is about embodiment. So a lot of the things I'll be having in the future are going to be embodied expressions and ways for people to get on their feet and feel on their feet and move through their feelings on their feet and heal on their feet together. There's a lot brewing. I would say if you're interested in what I'm up to, please follow me on Instagram. I'm at the Banana Jane, and that's really my hub. I have my website, which is for more for my, my one-on-one coaching and therapy, which is janegarnett.com. But Instagram is sort of the hub for the events, which will range from readings to dance parties, and there'll be other stuff in between. So yeah, stay posted.
Love it. Fantastic. Okay, so I will put links to Instagram and your website in the show notes. And
Oh, and the
I
book,
have
of
one
course.
last question for
And a link
you
to the
that
book,
I
where
asked
to
you.
buy it. Yes.
Yes, of course. Yes. So
Beautiful.
that will be in the show notes. Absolutely. So, my last question for you is what I asked you at the end of our first conversation. But I've been asking people this question again because it's been over a year. Perhaps the answer has changed. So, what are the new cycles that you are starting?
I'm definitely starting a new cycle right now, and it's about the collective. And it's about the collective nervous system, and it's about learning how to do it together. I've been in a long era of, the one-on-one model and the small group model. And I'm starting to see how to share my findings, my love, my nurture, my electricity, my creativity, my joy with groups of people, and to tap into their healing potential and their creativity. So the lone wolf is done and the wolf pack is on.
I love that. I love
So
that.
count yourself
All
in
right.
this time with
So,
feeling.
this time with feeling, this time with feeling, congratulations again. Get the book, you guys. You will love it. It is a wild ride and so beautiful, so powerful. Again, I think you're just an incredible role model for women, especially, I think, who are just maybe hesitating to make a change that they know, that they feel in their gut, in their soul, something is wrong, but I'm too scared. Jane did it. Jane did it. She survived and she's thriving. Look at her. Okay. So check her out. I'll put the link to the book and all of the other links in the show notes. Jane, I appreciate you so much. Thank you
Thank you,
so much
Heather. What
again
a
for
treat.
being on the show. All right. We'll see you later, everybody. We'll see you next time on the Cycle Starters podcast. Take care.